and Oldham Council are working hard behind the scenes to make sure that we deliver safe, effective COVID vaccination program. So what will happen next? At first instance, the most vulnerable in our communities will be given vaccination. And it's important that you wait for your turn. You do not need to contact your GP or anyone else. You will be contacted by your GP practice. Please follow instruction to make sure that we can effectively, safely deliver the vaccination program. And please stay safe.
The exciting news is that we've already started vaccinating people in Greater Manchester to protect them against COVID-19. I'd like to reassure all of us in Oldham that this is a good thing. And if you've heard or read anything negative or bad about the vaccine, those things simply aren't true. The vaccine is safe and has been tested for many months in trials involving over 40,000 people and 6 different countries. Those trials show that this vaccine is our best defence against this virus, along with keeping a safe distance, covering our faces and washing our hands. So the government have asked us to start with the people most at risk, and over time more people will be added and then invited to come and have their jab. It's important that you wait for the NHS to contact you so that this process can run as smoothly as possible. So our NHS has a busy few months ahead of us, because vaccinating thousands of people will take time. So please bear with us in this difficult time and in these trying circumstances. But together we will get through this. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Khan. And of course, good evening to those of you who are watching in Bangladesh, particularly in Dhaka and Sylhet. This afternoon, we're going to be discussing the economic progress and business opportunities that Bangladesh presents as a growing nation economically. And having been on a visit recently, I must admit I have witnessed some of that development and growth. And today, I'm so excited and so privileged to bring a really, really special guest to discuss this topic. And so let's introduce our guest, bring him on without further ado. And I'm so pleased that Ifty has found some time to join us. Please welcome Ifty Islam, who is the founder and chairman of AT Capital in Bangladesh. Ifty, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So we already have a lot of viewers online, and we've been given a salam by Samru Mia, and I'm sure both of them will be watching, Samru and Fakrul and many others. We'll do some audience interaction a little bit later. So without further ado, I know time is precious, not only for ourselves, but also for the viewers. So I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to do a little bit of introduction about yourself, Ifty, and then we're going to have a discussion. I've got some questions to point me in the right direction, and I'm sure you're going to enlighten our audience and give them some fantastic knowledge relating to our topic. So as I said before, Ifty is the founding partner at AT Capital and also the chairman, which was established in 2007. And his specialism is in corporate advisory, macro strategy, and various sector research, and with international clients and fund managers. So recently, one of your successes has been the China consortium, where you've part of the advisory in relation to the 25% investment that the Shenzhen and Shanghai stock exchanges have invested in the Dhaka Stock Exchange. And you've played a very big part in supporting Bangladesh's engagement in this. You're also the CEO of EasyWatts BD, a UK-based company developing renewable energy and other infrastructure projects. You've also worked on various consulting projects with the government of Bangladesh in a number of areas. capital markets development, particularly Dhaka Stock Exchange, climate change, RMG in the garments, and the energy sector. And of course, before you moved to Bangladesh, which is really interesting for our viewers to hear, you were the managing director of Citigroup in London. You were the head of the macro strategy and hedge fund research. And of course, before that, you worked in Deutsche Bank in London, New York, as the chief US strategist, and the list goes on. And of course, your academic background is Oxford University with the first class in Masters, first class in BA and MA in politics, philosophy, and economics. So what a brilliant credential, and what an excellent role model for our community globally. And also our viewers who are watching hopefully will be enlightened and get some fantastic insight that often they don't get. And viewers who are watching and who will be watching us later, they are all very passionate about Bangladesh. They want to contribute to Bangladesh, but often they struggle to do so. So I hope that today's program will help them to unpack some of the issues that they may have. Enough of me talking. Over to you. But before I go to you, Ifty, I do like to do this audience interaction because we've already got a lot of people on. Mizanur Rahman says, nice to see our role model Ifty Bhai with us today. Bashir Bhai says, excellent topic. Currently watched by BBCCI members throughout the United Kingdom and Europe. Keep up the good work. That's Bashir Bhai, the president of the British Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce. And Muhammad Shamsul Arifin Bhai says, it's an absolute pleasure watching and listening to both of you. BBCCI wishes you very good luck and good afternoon. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Carry on watching, and if you have any specific questions, please do pass them on. Sorry, we have a Dr. Ruhin Karim from Portsmouth. Ruhin Bhai says salams and good to see you all. And hopefully, Ruhin, will you get some answers about going and doing some work in Bangladesh that we talked about not so long ago, a couple of weeks ago. So Ifty Bhai, can you just, this first segment is all about you in terms of your personal background. We won't delve too much into your personal life, but I think for the purpose of our audience understanding where you come from, for example, where you grew up, and what did you study, and what was your ambition as a young man? What did you want to become? What did your mom and dad want you to become, as is with many families? And who was your role model? So there's a lot of questions loaded into one. I hope you'll be able to do a quick scenario of that. Over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much. So, well, thanks again, everybody, for joining and taking the time. Sorry if I think the lighting is a little bit, I guess it's great to have a sunny day in London, but it's -2 still in London, daytime high, but very sunny. So the lighting is a little bit random. I think I have an orange tie, but I think the sun is making it even more. But in any case, in terms of my background, I was born in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, actually in Dhaka Medical College. My parents were both doctors in Bangladesh, and I moved to the UK when I was 3 years old. And when I moved to the UK, I remember I couldn't speak any English. That's what I remember. People will laugh because now I can barely speak any Bangla, so it's a little bit ironic. But anyway, so yeah, I moved so I grew up for the first 11 years in Scotland, from the age of 3 to 11 in Cumbernauld. Any of you who've watched Gregory's Girl will know that's where Gregory's Girl was based. And then at the age of 11, I moved to a town called Polton the File, which is just outside Blackpool. So from the age of 11 to 18, I went to school in Blackpool. And then I went to university, as you mentioned, went to Oxford, read philosophy, politics, and economics. I guess I was more economics focused. And then after I left university, I started at BZW in 1989. Then it was known as Barclays Zoic Wed. Now it's Barclays Capital. I started working in the privatization unit. I was working actually on Hungary's first privatization. So this is when the wall was coming down. So that's how long, give away my age. And then I moved into equity research and then bonds and currencies. And so, as you mentioned, I was at various large investment banks in London mainly. And then I moved to New York for 4 years. I was actually in New York on 9/11, which was interesting, and I think when anybody goes through that, you get a lot of experience. Moved back to London, and then in 2007 set up AT Capital. So in terms of my motivation, I guess I've always been interested in Bangladesh, so I thought, as the expression goes, talk is cheap. So if we think about leveraging the diaspora, then I should move back. And I have a funny, an actual quote from my younger brother, Tariq Islam, who also did PP at Oxford, at the same college, Queen's College as well. And he's a very successful investment banker. He's now at Deutsche Bank, was at Goldman Sachs for a long time. But I remember in 2007, when I told him I was going to move to Bangladesh, I think the first thing he said is, if you're having a midlife crisis, why don't you buy a Ferrari like most investment bankers? Why do you have to go to Bangladesh? And so he and my parents were a little bit concerned. But yeah, it's been a tremendous learning experience and very never boring. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ifty. That's really good to know. And your last comment about why you're going to Bangladesh, why don't you get a Ferrari instead? I'm sure many people can resonate with that, because often I hear a lot of people who are really keen and passionate about investing or doing something in Bangladesh because of this is where the root is, and they often struggle for various reasons. And you're a perfect example of someone who's managed to successfully navigate your way through Bangladesh in terms of the business community, and you've done well, and I hope that people will see that and also listen and learn from what you've just said. I'm just going to go back to the audience because there's a lot of people on, and there's an Amin B. Chaudhry said, good topic. Dr. Musharraf says the orange tie is fine, actually. Mr. Musharraf supports your orange tie.
That's good.
And a Shafi from Riyadh says, interesting topic. I'm sure a lot of Brit Bangladeshis want to know how to get in there. And another Bashir Ahmed says, it's my pleasure to indulge this topic. First time by Ifty Islam, my nephew, son of my cousin, Dr. Azharul Islam.
That's right. I think he lives in Canada, I think.
Brilliant. So we have our first viewer from Canada. I'm hoping my relatives will join Bashir Shab. And we have Sufi Ahmed and various others, Mo Chowdhury, lots of people watching. So we've got a good turnout this afternoon. So when you were growing up, I know you went to Oxford and you did what you did, but back in the background, what did your parents want you to be when you were studying? Did they want you to go into medicine like they were doctors, or?
Well, I mean, I guess it is a cliche that most doctors want their kids to also be doctors. But I mean, to their credit, my parents, I think, had a lot of confidence and faith in both myself and my brother, and they didn't force us to go into medicine. My younger brother, as I mentioned, is an investment banker like me. But my younger sister is a doctor, a very successful doctor. She just became a consultant. She's also a research scientist as well. And so there's a mix. So even though both my parents are doctors, I think they wanted me to do what I enjoyed doing and what I was passionate about. And I think that's good advice for people, for parents ourselves. You should try and encourage your kids to not force them to do something they don't want to do, but try and find what they are good at, but also what they're passionate about. And I think that's probably the best guidance my parents gave me.
Brilliant. We've started getting lots of questions in, but we'll come back to that a little bit later. Let's talk about the economic progress of Bangladesh, because that is what is really, it excites me. I'm sure it excites you because you're in the thick of it. And also it excites a lot of people who watch it on Bangla Channel News and Facebook News and things like that. And people are genuinely interested in Bangladesh. So, of course, at the beginning, you sort of touched on it, but why did you actually choose to operate from Bangladesh? Why did you choose to go there? What was the kind of the trigger? Just if you could just tell people that, because that will resonate with a lot of people who want to go over there.
Yeah, I think that in terms of why I moved, as I mentioned before, I've always been interested in Bangladesh. I remember in 2000, even when I was based in both New York and London at Citigroup and at Deutsche Bank, I used to try and go to Bangladesh at least once if not every year, every couple of years, and learn about and get to meet people. So in 2007, before deciding to move, I spoke at a City NA, or what we know here as City Group. Mamun Rashid is a very well-known. He's now the senior partner for PwC Bangladesh, but he was the CEO and managing director of City NA, as City Group is known in Bangladesh, and they organized a big emerging markets conference in 2007 that I was speaking at. And there I got to meet a lot of fund managers and also corporates in Bangladesh, many of whom are still my friends. And I was even more motivated to go. Having been working in investment banking in London, New York for 18 years, I wanted to try and do something different. So I saw it partly as, definitely I saw an economic opportunity, but I wanted to also make some contribution to promoting Bangladesh to global investors. But one thing I would emphasize, like you were saying before, if you're very successful, I think that Bangladesh, it's very challenging being a businessman and entrepreneur. Maybe we can come back to that. But I don't consider myself successful. I think we're still, everybody has successes and failures.
Yeah.
And if you're an entrepreneur, probably they're amplified versus doing a job. The 18 years working in investment banking also had many, many challenges, working on Wall Street and in the city. But being an entrepreneur, I think, is even more challenging. So there's a lot of ups and downs. And I think, but as I said before, it's not boring. And I think that I feel I'm learning something all the time, even right now, today, yesterday, you keep learning and you make mistakes and you try and navigate them. So that's so I think in Bangladesh, the scope to succeed is significant, but the scope to make mistakes is also significant. And I think maybe something we can come back to later, but I think for my own experience, I think for non-resident Bangladeshis, there shouldn't be. I don't think you should see there's significant opportunities, but don't see Bangladesh through rose-tinted specs and assume that just because somebody's successful or has certain skills in the UK as an NRB, they can automatically translate to Bangladesh. So I think people have to be realistic and recognize that Bangladesh is also challenging, but with lots of opportunities.
And this is the bit I'm going to come on to now, this whole notion of these lots of opportunities, because where you're sat, and Pat, because of your background in terms of the macro strategies that you used to be involved in for the various banks you worked for, what do you see at a macro level, the developments of Bangladesh, and perhaps we'll touch on the micro levels as well?
Sure. I mean, well, let's take right now. So if we just got the UK 2020 GDP numbers yesterday, and the UK economy contracted by 9.9%. So that's the worst for 300 years since the Great Frost of 1709. And it was the worst amongst the G7. By contrast, I believe Bangladesh is the best performing economy in the world in 2020.
Wow.
GDP growth grew by 4% last year. Or that's the current estimate. And so I think that's consistent with. It's not an aberration. In the last decade, I think Bangladesh has been the best performing economy you could argue in the world, certainly risk adjusted. So macroeconomists, I don't want to blind everybody with macroeconomics and send everybody to sleep, but there's something that economists call the Sharpe ratio. So if you look at the level of growth versus the volatility of growth, Bangladesh actually is a very stable economy, and people, especially British Bangladeshis, many of them think Bangladesh is that they see Bangladesh through the kind of chaos of when they go there and visit, and the traffic and the general hustle and bustle, and everything seems very disorganized. But actually, Bangladesh has been growing at 5.5% to 7% plus 7.5% for the last decade, pretty consistently. And in the last global financial crisis, 2007, 2008, when I moved to Bangladesh, again, Bangladesh was the most stable economy in the world. I mean, in 2007, GDP growth was 6.1%. By 2008, GDP growth had only fallen to 5.8%. And you had economies like Vietnam and India and others where growth was halving. So I would call Bangladesh the sort of Teflon economy, it's like so it seems to be kind of non-stick, and it's a very interesting story as to why that's the case. Where is this economic resilience coming from? And I think that in part, the garment sector. I mean, we're kind of I again would say Bangladesh is the sort of the Walmart garment producers, or the McDonald's of garment producers, you could say, in the sense that Bangladesh is producing at the low end of the garment sector, so very price competitive products, but that's much more resilient to economic downturns than higher, more expensive, high value added stuff. We'll come back to the garment sector maybe in this discussion, because that's quite interesting. So that's one factor. I think remittances has also been a big support. We've seen record remittances last year. So even with the global economic meltdown, remittances in Bangladesh actually went up last year to a new record. So all of the non-resident Bangladeshis in the UK, but especially those workers in the Middle East, keep sending money back to Bangladesh. But the final thing I would say is that it is maybe one of the things I've learned in the sort of 13 plus years I've been in Bangladesh, is actually the quality of, I think Bangladeshi entrepreneurs are the best in the world. And so there's an expression from, I talk about Austrian philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. So I guess you don't normally talk about Bangladesh and Austrian philosophy together, but Friedrich Nietzsche used to say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think that's actually the key kind of ethos. Well, I'm constantly, impressed. People's abilities of entrepreneurs in Bangladesh, who I meet all the time, exceed my expectations. So there's something about Bangladeshi entrepreneurship, which is just, there's a sort of secret sauce. So I think it's just a very tough environment. When I moved there, there's power cuts all the time, and it's difficult to deal with the bureaucracy sometimes, and there's corruption and this and that. All these things that are there, but somehow Bangladeshi business people keep succeeding, and so I have tremendous respect for the quality of business people in Bangladesh. So that's maybe something that's worth noting.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, thanks for that. And, that's really well said. And I'm sure my viewers are taking note. So in terms of, obviously the entrepreneurs are navigating their way, and like you said, they're exceeding even your expectations, and they're hugely successful. Some of the people, of course, you come across them all the time, but often when I'm on my visit once a year, and some of the people I come across, it amazes me how fast things have changed within 12 months, and how the landscape is shifting in terms of the growth that businesses and industries are seeing. How has the government ensured that that the free economy works and that the country grows through the private sector?
Yeah, I said I'm definitely apolitical. I don't have any strong political. Let's call me politically ignorant. I don't know enough about local Bangladeshi politics to have a very strong view. But I would say that in the last, at least on the macroeconomy, the government of the Honourable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has done a very impressive job. And I think if you think through what are some of the macro. The positive macro backdrop, or the macro drivers of growth. So Bangladesh, about more than 80% of Bangladesh's exports are coming from the garment sector. So there is a need to diversify exports. 65% of garment exports goes to Europe, about 30% to the North America. So there's also a need to diversify towards Asia. So that's another macroeconomic requirement. But what the government has, I think, done very successfly is to invest very heavily on infrastructure. So there's a lot of mega infrastructure projects that have been happening in Bangladesh. We've seen, Podler Bridge is the one that's probably getting the biggest focus now. But when I moved there in 2007, 2008, there was load shedding all the time. And I remember in 2008, 2009, there was rioting and people were attacking power stations. There was so much load shedding. So compared to that, we now actually almost have a power surplus. So Bangladesh has that. We have much better quality infrastructure. And Bangladesh has also been very effective. It hasn't necessarily attracted huge amounts of FDI, but it's also beginning to attract more FDI as well. And I think looking forward, another very important initiative from the current government is these new 100 economic zones. So these economic zones are going to be critical, I think, in attracting FDI, diversifying away from garments to other industries, and particularly bringing in technology. The other thing on technology, I think that again, the government of the Honourable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has done very well is Digital Bangladesh. So Digital Bangladesh is kind of a buzz phrase, but actually from the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's advisor, Wajid Joy and also ICT Minister Palak Pai. So that I think that Bangladesh has gone through a lot of digital transformation. If I look to the next 5 to 10 years, I think some of the most exciting opportunities for Bangladesh will be in the technology sector. It could be technology manufacturing. It could be in the digital economy. And maybe we can come back to that later in the discussion.
Well, that was really going to be my next question anyway. What are the biggest growth areas at the moment, and technology and opportunity driven by technology? So that's a lot of entrepreneurs are coming through with new ways of doing things, and what we call Uberization. And sitting in on Bangladesh Angels numerous presentations and pitches, all I'm seeing is technology driven initiatives and projects that are coming through that are going to change the landscape of not only business but education and healthcare. And one of the questions linked to healthcare is, how is AI going to change delivering healthcare in Bangladesh?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of interesting things there. So one, I think that there are some great success stories beyond. I mean, Digital Bangladesh has had a big impact in terms of digitizing the government itself. But we've also seen some specific success stories. I think the one that really stands out is Bcash, which most NRBs who've been to Bangladesh can't, and even ones from here. Bcash was started in 2010 by Kamal and Iqbal Kader, and along with with BRAC. BRAC chairman Fazli Abed, the former, and also Rumi Ali. So that went from being a startup in 2011. It's now worth $1 billion. So it's Bangladesh's first unicorn. Ant Financial, Ant Group, which has been in the headlines in the last few months because of Jack Ma's run-in with the Chinese government. But Ant Financial is actually, or Ant Group as it's now known, has invested $120 million for 20% of Bcash. So Bcash has gone from a startup to now having more than 35 million customers and regular users. Another significant contribution from the government has been, mobile phone and internet usage. So I think that, everybody down to the village level has pretty good internet and access to phones, and increasingly smartphones. So I think Bangladesh is also kind of the Facebook, what I call the Facebook generation. I think that in Bangladesh is now, I think, the third biggest Facebook, or Dhaka city is the third biggest Facebook city in Asia, after wow. I think it's Mumbai, and then Bangkok, and then Dhaka. Interesting. So Dhaka city in when in 1971 in independence, Dhaka city was 2 million people. It's now 20 million people. So the other thing I always emphasize to investors and people that think about the economy of Bangladesh is, don't forget that it's the most densely populated country in the world. So that presents a lot of challenges, and an interesting. So it's already it's probably, I think Dhaka city is 3 times as population dense as Mumbai. So we have 170 million people, 144,000 square kilometers. So just slightly bigger than Wales. We have 170 million people, but that also presents lots of opportunities as well. So I think that population density that is actually presented a lot of growth drivers and opportunities for Bangladesh as well. So I think when we think about the economic outlook, it's also worth thinking about how to take advantage of this massive population. It's a 12th of India's it's an 1/8 of India's population. It's a 12th of India's GDP. So yeah, in fact, actually, I think I've got those statistics wrong, because the other thing that I had that fixed, sort of hardwired in my head, but actually last year was also very interesting, 2020, because Bangladesh's GDP per capita overtook India. So during COVID, because Bangladesh was much more resilient to COVID than India. So India's economy contracted by 8 to 9%. Bangladesh's grew by 4%. As a result, per capita income in Bangladesh has risen to $1,900 or thereabouts, which is slightly ahead of India. Nobody could have thought 10 years ago that Bangladesh per capita income could be above India's. So again, Bangladesh's performance is very impressive. There are definitely a lot of challenges for the Bangladesh economy, and maybe we can come to that later on. But Bangladesh is coming out of COVID having performed relatively impressively.
Great. We're going to come back to another question, but I need to do some audience interaction at this point. And this is what I will do, if you just bear with me for 1 second. So I just want to give a shout out to Shoaib Khan watching from Sylhet. Dr. Musharraf is already watching. Shafiqul, Mahmoud Hassan from London. And we have Shabuz Khan watching from Sylhet, Anwarul Islam from Oldham, Kashif Ashraf, Rafiqul Islam, and Dr. Sadiq Mian Muslek Bhai, he's watching from the UK Curry Connect. Thank you, Muslek Bhai. If you got any questions, please do type them in. And we also have a question from Dr. Musharraf Hussain, who says, with a lot of people having a smartphone in Bangladesh, what is the prospect of wearables for diagnostic use in health? And before that, we had another question, suggestion, I guess, really, is sometimes people can be intimidated by the high level of commerce that Brother Ifty is involved in. How can people with small or medium level investment get involved in the economic development opportunities in Bangladesh? And the final one is, do banks and institutions provide loans or a startup package to encourage non-resident Bangladeshis businesses to start in Bangladesh? And we have a Shahid Mia who is either is flying in from Abu Dhabi today or is still there. Thanks to Ifty Islam to come forward to help BDA and its communities around the world. We need such people to come forward. Khansab watching. Oh, you're in Paris now. You're in transit. Thanks to Ifty Bhai for me. So yeah, we've had various comments, if you remember any of them, but certainly.
Sure. Well, I guess there's not many people in transit these days, so that's a rare thing to be in transit anywhere. I think.
I think he's trying to avoid. I think he's trying to avoid the hotel quarantine. That's why he's coming back today.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. Okay, so just taking, I think, Musharraf Uncle's first question about wearables. I mean, I think, in fact, I was actually also the co-founder of a AI health startup back in, or at least I was 2015. It's now, it was actually a University of Tokyo startup. In fact, they've done very well. It's called MIUP, MIUP. And they've done well in both Japan and they've got a successful operation in Bangladesh. But I think we're still just at the cusp of how technology can revolutionize healthcare. So I worked on that project for more than 2 years. In fact, I did a conference call this morning with another person who's interested in setting up an AI genomic service in Bangladesh. We're interested in both genomics, genetic screening, and also artificial intelligence. So we just had that call today, and so she's interested in the garment sector, but actually, is a genetic scientist by background. So, so I think there's, on the specific issue of wearables, I think that there is a huge scope to leverage technology still to deliver much high quality primary healthcare. Bangladesh has outperformed India and many countries in the quality of its primary healthcare. I think not least because of NGOs like BRAC and Grameen have done a tremendous job on a wide range of areas from neonatal, reducing infant deaths, neonatal care. So Bangladesh has done tremendously well in healthcare and quite a bit better than India. But I think that the next phase needs to leverage technology, whether that's AI, whether it's IoT and wearables. And I think that that's one area where NRBs and those who are involved in the healthcare sector in the UK are interested in technology. There's 170 million people, and I think that one of the themes that I was developing and exploring with MIUP back in 2015, 2016 was the idea of Bangladesh as a data laboratory. I know that sounds a bit, when you think about healthcare and data laboratory, it's not to take away anybody's data away, but actually when you have this hugely massive population, 170 million people, and this population density, there's a huge, AI is not about the algorithms, it's about data. So, when you want to develop sophisticated AI systems, the key thing is having huge amounts of data. And particularly when we think about health, the one thing that Bangladesh has is huge amounts of data. So I think that maybe that's a topic for another time because it's an hour conversation on its own. But I would say, in answer to that, I think absolutely agree with Musharraf Uncle that there's significant opportunities for leveraging AI, big data, and wearables, IoT, and that's a good opportunity for NRBs to take some of their tech, to work with, say, AI or health tech companies, med tech companies in the UK, and try and develop projects in Bangladesh. And if you can develop particular technologies and develop sophisticated AI for, say, doing things like preemptive medicine, then that business model can be implemented in other developing countries as well. I think that's I think on the second question, about, I think it was about I want to work on large commercial projects and how to get involved. In fact, I work on some large projects, but we work on I work with entrepreneurs of all types, and I'm a startup entrepreneur myself. So we worked on this healthcare startup. We've just launched actually a technology company, Infinity Technologies, in the UK. So myself and my business partner, we're working on fintech and other technology projects in the UK. So I know exactly what it is to be a startup myself. So I think that. Sorry, Muzzy, go.
No, I was going to say on this note, Ifty, this obviously we're not to disclose too much, but we are working on some startup initiatives that will be launched in the very near future with BBCCI. Exactly.
So I think that that question is very close to our hearts. Bashir Bhai and others from BBCCI, everybody is interested in supporting, entrepreneurs. And I think that I wrote an article. Happy to email it to anybody that would like to see it on the call, or we can share it maybe after as a link for the BBCCI January newsletter. So I wrote an article about digital entrepreneurship post-COVID, and again, we may not have time to talk about it in detail, but actually I think that obviously there's kind of, sometimes we look at COVID, the COVID economy in the UK, it's like a disaster zone, like a disaster movie, so to speak, literally. The streets are empty and there's economic devastation. But so it's like one of these zombie movies. Will Smith, I Am Legend. But I think the thing is, there is a lot of structural shocks and changes in the UK economy, and I think that's also going to create a lot of opportunities for new digital entrepreneurs to emerge. And I think that's what we're developing. As you said, we're developing a program as you speak with Bashir Bhai, with yourself, yes, you too, Mohiddin, and others. I think that my only point I'd emphasize, and because we'll probably cover this in a future show, we'll cover this topic in more detail. I think the digital entrepreneurship is not about big companies or huge investments. I would say that if somebody wants to become an Amazon reseller themselves, then how do we help them do that? If somebody wants to create digital content, how do we help them do that? If somebody wants to start in their bedroom in e-commerce, how do we help them do that? So I think that COVID has accelerated digital economy trends, and is actually now the barriers to becoming an entrepreneur come down quite a bit. So now the question is how to create an ecosystem to incubate and encourage digital entrepreneurs in our community and more broadly, how to make sure financing is available, how to make sure mentorship's available. And I think the other thing that we'll be exploring is there are some great success stories in Bangladesh in tech companies. We mentioned Bcash. There's Patao, yeah, a ride-hailing local ride-hailing company. Even ShopUp, which is an e-commerce company, they raised $25 million last year with
Silicon Valley investment,
Sequoia Capital. There's Nogod, which is the Ministry of Telecoms Ministry, sponsored or supported government project, but it's a private sector one as well. They've also done very well. There's a lot of great success stories, and I think what we want to also be able to do is build a bridge between, successful digital entrepreneurs in Bangladesh and those in the UK. So there's no reason why, of course, we can look for ways for UK investors to invest into digital entrepreneurship opportunities, digital companies in Bangladesh. But I think that we can also look for Bangladeshi companies especially technology companies, to come to the UK, partner with investors and entrepreneurs here, and find new opportunities in the UK economy.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to go back to the audience interaction, because we have Shafi from Riyadh says, how accurate is it to compare BD growth and India, given the massive population of India, or difference between the massive population? Dr. Hussain says, as you know, Prava Health in Dhaka is trying to establish quality primary care and investment and investment is from NRBs, I would encourage other NRBs to come forward and invest in healthcare in BD. Thank you, Dr. Hussain. And Kashif Ashraf says, so Kashi is a co-founder of the Asian Business Leaders in Greater Manchester, which I mentioned to you briefly yesterday. Which areas in Bangladesh would you advise as the ones with future potential growth in the home market as well as internationally?
Yeah, that's a very broad question, but I would say that well, I mean, actually, just to address the previous question, which was how can you compare Bangladesh with India? Well, actually, Bangladesh is, Bangladesh is 170 million people. It's the 8th most populous country in the world. So I mean, yes, India has 1.2 billion, but Bangladesh is an extremely high population country. It's almost 3 times the population of the UK. To state the obvious. So one thing we don't lack in Bangladesh is people. So population scarcity is not going to be a problem. In fact, I think on current forecasts, by 2050, Bangladesh will have more than 200 million people and 15% less land. So it's because of climate change, because of rising sea levels. So actually, it's already the most densely populated country. It's become even more densely populated. So that's both a challenge and an opportunity. Coming back to the issue, I think that there are many areas to invest in Bangladesh, and it depends actually what I mean. It can be in technology, it can be in even the garment sector, which is I was just having a discussion with somebody today as well. Yeah, the garment sector is kind of the big kahuna. It's a $35 billion a year sector. But actually, the garment sector has faced many challenges last year with COVID, with buy cancellations in April, May. It's still struggling with lockdowns in its main markets in Europe. But I think one of the things that Bangladeshi Garments needs to do is to move B2C. That's from business to consumer directly. So most of Bangladeshi Garments is focused, in fact, all of it is focused on, producing for H&M or Marks and Spencer's or Primark or Walmart in the US and so on. And I think that there's going to be a huge opportunity for NRBs to work with garment companies to actually go B2C. And I think the UK is a perfect market to start that. Going B2C requires coming up with a branding strategy, coming up with logistics and inventory, coming up with financing, coming up with a digital marketing strategy. And there's no reason why NRB business people all the way, so it can be somebody like, some BBCCI members who want to invest and become in warehousing or in retailing, e-commerce, all the way to somebody that's, as I said, working from home that wants to become an Amazon reseller or Bangladeshi Garments. So I think there are opportunities there. I think there's also opportunities in seafood and also in manufacturing diversification. I'd also emphasize knowledge-based industries as well. So beyond technology, education is another big opportunity in training. So I think there's a big opportunity with 170 million people for technology transfer and knowledge transfer. And finally, climate change. So I think climate change is a big challenge, but as it's also a tremendous opportunity. So Bangladesh is what's known as the largest MVC, which MVC is the most vulnerable country. And there's going to be, billions of dollars of climate change financing available for Bangladesh. It's what I call the first world guilt trip. So, because developed countries have been polluting for the last 200 years, and countries like Bangladesh are kind of bearing the brunt of the consequences of climate change. So we've got climatic volatility. So tornadoes and rising sea levels and flooding. Bangladesh is kind of bearing the consequences of 200 years of pollution and global warming from developed countries. So there's a lot of financing available there. So I think the challenge is not always financing. The challenge is coming up with innovative ideas. And I think the UK is very strong in climate change technologies and industries, and that may be something else. Anyway, back to you.
Great, thanks for that. And Cassius, thank you for your insight. And we have another comment from Abdul Malik Ahad, who is saying, good discussion, great to hear Ifty Islam, especially with his vast experience with enterprise and capital markets. And Dr. Musharraf has come back and says, thanks, Ifty. We, the Fantastic Four, Shafi and Mujahid, and of course you missed out Ruhin there, did discuss about knowledge transfer digitally. And we did have some Zoom sessions, and we shall continue with that as Ifty has suggested, that outside of industry, there is a great opportunity in knowledge transfer and education, and there's a huge hunger for knowledge and development in Bangladesh. And I know that because I've just literally been there and witnessed it through some of my relatives who are actually delivering lectures there for University of Chester and other universities, but based in Dhaka. So if we're there's a lot to talk about, I know, and we can't do that in an hour. Perhaps we'll segment these sessions in the future through BBCCI and through any other platforms. So literally just touching on climate change and green energy and the economic zones that are being created for green energy driven businesses. Literally yesterday I was in a session with Her Excellency the Bangladesh High Commissioner to London, Saida Munna, and various other people. I don't know if you were in there yesterday, but they specifically talked about climate change and green energy and inviting NRBs to think about investing in green technologies out there, or encouraging those who in Britain who already have green technology based businesses to look at developing those in those export zones. So can you just tell our audience a little bit more about the huge potential that climate change and green technology to be implemented in Bangladesh is kind of looking to the future, is probably one of the things that we should consider and advise investors and potential business people with innovative ideas. And as you rightly said, the world is buying carbon credits from Bangladesh, so there is the guilt trip money is flowing into Bangladesh, and I think Sheikh Hasina, the Honourable Prime Minister, has this as one of the forefront of her mind in terms of tackling climate change.
Yeah, I mean, I think I worked, as said, on different climate change projects for the last 3 years. I wouldn't say that Bangladesh has managed to scale large projects. I mean, there's been the small solar homes, heating systems. Sorry, so small solar systems, about 4.5 million households got these small solar systems, and that's been a tremendous success. So these little solar panels that were powering a TV and so. But actually, in terms of large scale solar, the big challenge for Bangladesh is a lack of land. So that stopped really large scale solar projects coming up. But I think that, again, one project that I hope will be taking off. In fact, a mutual friend was Litu Moidin of the Gin and Tea Bar in Cheltenham. So Litu is also coming up, is doing a very interesting, innovative project on aquaculture. I think with one of the Royal Agricultural University in the UK. We're going to have a call with one of my business partners, Manny. So they're doing it's called agro solar technology. So what Manny's been doing is basically integrating greenhouses with aquaculture. So the solar panels will be in the greenhouses, and they'll be doing intensive fish farming. So this is the kind of project where we have a lot of great technologies in the UK. We can actually launch these businesses in the UK. So NRBs could be investing into those projects in the UK. Yeah. And refining that technology in the business model, and then we can take them to Bangladesh. There's no reason why you can't have this agro solar, so greenhouse-based solar panels integrated with intensive fish farming in Bangladesh as well. And we can move away from I think one of the things that Litu said to me, which I agree with, is that when we talk about climate change, having to ship huge numbers of prawns and so on from Bangladesh to the UK, we can actually make the whole process more efficient. And Bangladesh needs the domestic market for seafood and prawns in Bangladesh is already huge. And Bangladesh should be looking to not ship seafood and prawns from Bangladesh to the UK and Europe, but actually concentrating on Asian markets. So I think that, it's a vast topic, not time today to go into too much detail, but I would say that for young entrepreneurs in the UK, who, to think about leveraging technologies climate change technologies, other kinds of green technologies, where the UK is a global leader, and maybe working with universities here and trying to, implement those projects in Bangladesh. And if it works in Bangladesh, it's going to work in other developing countries.
Right. We're just looking at the time. I think we've literally got about 11 minutes left. One of the questions was about startup support, financial. Do the banks give any startup financial support in Bangladesh? I think I know of a young man who's asked that question because he's thinking of setting up a technology-based base in Dhaka.
Yeah, that's a good question. Banks don't so much. I mean, there has historically been a shortage of risk capital in Bangladesh compared to India. So if we're talk about everything in Bangladesh in glowing terms, so lack of risk capital is definitely one of the challenges. I mean, in India, I think there are 350 VC and private venture capital and private equity firms. I think in Bangladesh, there's not even 5. So that's been a challenge. But the ICT ministry has taken a number of important initiatives, Sajid Joy and Polak Pai, and there is quite a lot of grants available in Bangladesh from the ICT ministry for startups, and it's not and NRB is in no way excluded as far as I'm aware. So I think that NRB should engage, come up with the idea and the concept framework, and they can get some catalytic funding, startup funding. There's actually a new Startup Bangladesh company that's been set up by I think sponsored by ICT Ministry. Tina Jabin is the managing director, a US NRB that's moved back to Bangladesh. She's very dynamic, very progressive in terms of supporting quite a wide range of technology projects. So I think that, again, I would say if you've got a good idea, then after you do a kind of a pilot study, one should be able to raise money. And actually, another thing we'll be working on this year with Bashir Bai and others from BBCCI is to create a financing platform for technology projects, both in the UK for NRBs and also for Bangladesh technology companies as well. So I would strongly encourage people to look. I mean, I think it's good to look to Bangladesh for investment. I mean, for investment opportunities in technology. But I would also encourage everybody that's watching not to overlook the significant technology and digital opportunities in the UK for British Bangladeshis.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think just a bit more audience interaction. B2C will be a great move. I'm involved with social enterprises in Bangladesh and looking to export small garments items back to the UK market. Ifty's insight has just encouraged me a little bit further. So that's Shafi in Riyadh. Right, well, there were lots to come back to, Ifty. I'm sure we're going to run out of time, but I do really want to talk about your love for technology. I know we talked a lot about business and the environment and lots of different things, but coming back to a more on a personal note, when you're in Dhaka and you send all these beautiful pictures of food and all the food places that exist in Dhaka, and particularly in Gulshan, where I tried to go and follow your footsteps recently. Is it about food, or is it the photography that you love most?
I like food, but it's actually more the photography. But it's quite funny. I think whenever I gain weight and then I see people that say, "Oh yeah, you've been eating a lot recently," I was like, "No, I took a picture of the food. I didn't actually. It doesn't mean I've eaten everything I take a picture of. There's no correlation between taking a picture of the food and having to eat it." But no, I guess definitely one of my passions is photography. I mean, maybe sometimes I flood my Facebook page with too many pictures. But no, I think it's I think photography is great. And there's a funny story. Another, I think one of the, most Mary Mansour. I don't know if you've been to, when you were in Bangladesh. You went to Horse and Horse.
I didn't go. Horse and Horse, yeah.
I mean. That's again a tremendous story. We don't have time for it today, but as an entrepreneurial success story, I mean, she's went to university in the US, grew up. Her father was Hassan Manza was a friend of mine. He was the most senior Bangladeshi in the IMF, so she traveled around the world a lot. But anyway, when she came back to Bangladesh, she literally started Sushi Samurai from a kitchen. She started making sushi in a kitchen, in her own kitchen. And then actually started, I won't digress, but she remember one thing I remember 4 or 5 years ago, she was telling me that she trained, there's some of her staff used to work in car repair shops, and she trained them from moving from repairing cars to actually making sushi. I mean becoming sushi chef. But anyway, when I went to one of her restaurants, she said a few years back, she said, "Oh, well, she was hosting me, and it's obviously her restaurant, Sushi Samurai." She said, "What would you like to eat?" And then I said, "Well, whatever photographs well." So, but yeah, so I think that photography is a passion. I think technology generally. So beyond thinking of technology as a business, I'm a bit of a gadget guy. So I think after my 10th or 12th pair of headphones and hi-fi and any gadget, actually, anything that's new. So I'm definitely, I think global electronics companies love people like me because I keep buying the latest technology with no good reason. When I just got an S21 Ultra, and I'll probably end up buying an iPhone 13 whenever it comes out as well. So yeah.
Well, so that's great. I know you love technology and you love taking photography, and but there's a lot of people who ask, about the quality of food and restaurants in Dhaka, and obviously, I frequent them once a year, and not as many. But of course, with looking at your photos, people do get excited about wanting to visit those places. So, what are your top recommendations? I know Horse and Horse is one, and Samurai.
There's so many, but I think that I mean, as I said, I like Horse and Horse and Sushi Samurai. Izumi is very good. It's the I've taken out because I work with my co-founders of Mute were Japanese. That when they came to Bangladesh from Japan, they were always impressed by Izumi. So I think Izumi's a great restaurant. But actually, there's so many. I mean, I think the quality of food in Dhaka City is improved dramatically, and there's so much choice. And I think both the Food Panda and Hungry Naki and other delivery companies have been booming. So actually, Bangladeshis have become increasingly kind of eating out culture has become more normal. So I think if any NRBs are worried about going to Dhaka because they'll be limited to just having Deshi food. I mean, Deshi food is fantastic, but if they want, I think they'll be have a much wider choice of food going to Dhaka than probably they have in Manchester.
Yeah, I that's what I was going to suggest, that the quality of food and the quality of restaurants in Dhaka is absolutely out of this world. And
it's worth bearing in mind that, and again, I don't want to over flatter all the entrepreneurs, but I think people that set up restaurants in Dhaka, bear in mind it has extremely high levels of rent. So rent levels are very, very high, and actually ingredients are very expensive. So that's also an opportunity. So coming back to climate change and agriculture, I think that a lot of the things that high quality restaurants are importing from overseas, those could probably be grown locally if we had the right kinds of intensive farming or techniques. So yeah,
fabulous. And finally, we are literally on the dot. So I just wanted to apologize to the viewers. I know there was a lot more that we wanted to perhaps come back to, but I think 1 hour is enough for your concentration, but also it's not enough to discuss many things that we could have discussed today. And I guess one of the things we may try and do in the future is to come back with it. In fact, one of the things we are going to come back with, separate to this program, is a series of webinars we're working on. And those webinars will be targeted at numerous topics, digital being one of them. And I think certainly Ifty, myself, and the others working on these will be soon launched. So friends and viewers who are watching today, you will get to hear about it in some way or shape. And do join us for those webinars, because I think those webinars will give you a better insight into specific topics in terms of helping you to grow. So I'm just going to do a final audience interaction before we close, if that's okay, and then I'll come back to you. Dr. Hussein's come back and says, great program with a brilliant guest. It has been the best program you have ever presented that I have watched. Food and photography, light refreshment. And so Dr. Hussein, I'm privileged that you You think this is the best ever program that I've presented? That's probably because the guest is the best ever. So I don't want to take anything away from our guest today, but maybe I'm a bit more livelier than I am usually. So thank you, Dr. Hussain.
It's the orange tie, I think.
So I actually wore my special Arong top that I bought in December, as I was saying earlier. So Shafi says, great presenter with a great guest. Thank you, Shafi. You're always too kind, as with Dr. Hussain. So on a final note, Ifty, if like I said, I don't know if we've done enough justice to what we set out to do, but of course we promise to come back in the future through those webinars and maybe another program on PBTV. Kashif says awesome tie. By the way, Kashi knows about ties, so
that's good. So that's I think I do a weekly or bi-weekly global macro update for with my kind of AT Capital hat on, and it's this sort of running joke that I don't know what's more volatile, the financial markets or my breath tank. So I get quite, I don't know, mixed feedback on my jacket, tie, shirt, choices. But I guess in these difficult times, then you have to approach things with some sense of humor, even if you're in your dress sense as well.
Okay, so we will come to the close now, and just a few more final thoughts from yourself, particularly in relation to how businesses have managed to navigate through 1 year of COVID, and what does the future look like?
Sure. I mean, I think it remains a very challenging environment, especially in the UK. I think in Bangladesh, no point. I mean, it's a difficult environment for many businesses in Bangladesh as well, especially small businesses. So although Bangladesh has done relatively better compared to the UK, it's still been a very difficult environment. It remains a difficult environment for very large garment companies all the way to young, small entrepreneurs. But I would also conclude by saying that yes, there is lots of opportunities for NRBs, British Bangladesh, to invest in Bangladesh. But I would really again emphasize the opportunities to collaborate with Bangladeshi businesses. And I think with Bashir Bhai, British Bangladesh Chamber, with others, yourself, Litu, we want to really help to encourage the entrepreneurial opportunities in the UK for British Bangladeshis. And I think, Mozid, I'll conclude by thanking you. We haven't worked together very closely, but I know you've done a tremendous job in the community. And I think that's extremely, I mean, for me, it's good. Yes, I've historically worked with large businesses, but actually I think the most important thing that you're doing, and if we can support in any way, I'm always happy to give time for that, is actually to encourage and motivate young Bangladeshis in particular in the community. And who many of whom are feeling a sense of despair and despondency. It's a very difficult time. Many people are either students stuck at home because they can't study, or people have become unemployed through no fault of their own because of the circumstances of this COVID crisis. So I think if we can positively motivate young British Bangladeshis, and beyond motivate, actually help people to find new economic opportunities, whether it's setting up their own business, whether it's working with investing in Bangladesh, I think that's probably something that is I'll be giving a lot of time, Bashir Bhai as well, and others in 2021. So yes, times are difficult for all of us, but I think that from this kind of wreckage of the sort of COVID economy, I think there'll be a lot of new opportunities, and we have to try to find them together.
Brilliant, thank you. So friends and viewers, thank you very much for watching. And just a final few shout outs. We've got Shamsul Arifin Bhai, who is saying, we're looking forward to listening to you soon again. Had a wonderful time. And we have Abdullah Williams Society is watching from Liverpool, Ubaidul from Oldham, and Kabir Bhai has inboxed me saying, great program, going Bangladesh soon, hopefully with some projects. And because he's inboxing me, I can't say what they are. But anyway, so you're absolutely right. No, thank you for your kind words, Ifty Bhai, and of course we look forward to further interactions and developing the ideas that we've been sort of discussing in the background. And as you know, in Greater Manchester, there's a big British Bangladeshi community in this part of the world, and a lot of young people, you're absolutely right, are feeling a bit despondent. And one of the things myself and Cash and others and Jahid, who's controlling the show, is we're constantly talking to young people, and young entrepreneurs are coming through as a result of COVID, because they're finding their innovation within themselves, and introducing new business, new ideas. And it's how we can help them to grow, help them to overcome barriers, and help them to find other opportunities, whether it be financing or collaboration or co-creation, to help them to become, the future employers and the future contributors to society through their success stories. So watch out for the new initiatives to come out. And then, of course, once again, thank you all for joining. Thanks everyone for those wonderful interactions. And you're not going to let me go, are you? So I've got another comment to read out before we close that. So Darren Robinson says, great show, presenter and guests. I've learned a lot today. Thanks, Darren. I'll be in touch shortly about the photography that we talked about. And by the way, if Darren is a professional photographer, a good friend of ours, and does a lot of photography for industry. Recently done some COVID photography, and works from various magazines and newspapers. So thanks, Darren, for watching. I didn't know you were there in the background. So yeah, once again, thank you very much to Ifty Islam for joining us, giving us his valuable time in his incredible schedule, and hope that some of the projects that we're working on will come to light and you'll get to find out about them, and we can support hundreds of young entrepreneurs in our communities throughout Bangladesh, but also collaborate with Bangladesh, where the land of opportunity is growing even further. So yeah, once again, we'll see you soon, and thank you very much, and have a good day, and stay safe, and follow the rules.